Hello, beautiful people. It's that time again where we can celebrate the solo developer. The ones who sit down and put out not just one, but multiple games. Of varying quality, yes, but they can still be celebrated for their vision. And in this age of multiple A gaming, it's good to take things down a notch and focus on smaller games. So before we start, go grab a drink and get ready to be a little spooked this time. Disaster Squad Productions, or DS for short, is the developer of the Cursed series of games. I don't know if that's an ironic title or not, but it does make it hard to search for on Google. These are retro-style point-and-click adventures with some action involved, clearly taking inspiration from older DOS games of the time and adding more layers onto them. Except this other game, Carl's Cookie Warehouse, that feels very much like an arcade game. It's fun, but not really the topic of my deep dive here. I do have to mention all his games are free on Steam, but he does have a Patreon if you enjoy them and want to give any support. Oh, and he also has a YouTube page. What is this?
Your father and I are trying to make sure he doesn't poop his pants on the couch.
Hard on your face. No, I'm innocent.
This is a lovely room of death. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Now I know some people will be immediately turned off by this visual style, and I want you to wait a second. Let me bring you in slow. Sit down, nice and easy, and just get comfortable, because it's about to go uphill from here. Cursed 1 is rough, but it has a charm I couldn't escape. It's like those B movies you enjoy, but everyone else looks at you weird when you bring them to a movie night. The story in the first game is pretty simple. You play an unnamed citizen asked to go into a mysterious mine to find the missing daughter of the bar owner. And spooky stuff happens. Once inside the mine, you have your standard point-and-click tropes of clicking on everything and using different items to progress further. The puzzles aren't too complicated, and if you keep your eyes open, it's pretty easy to figure out where to go. The snag here is combat, and it's a little janky. Which isn't to say the game itself doesn't have some wonderful jank tied to it. Most painful the text box is going over items you need to click on at the bottom, or just accidentally staying stuck there so you struggle to click on the arrow to move back. But combat is something else. Every now and again you will get a random encounter where you can lay still for the enemy to pass. But this has never worked, don't even try it. Meaning combat is mostly mandatory, and it works fine. Click to block attacks and retaliate with a swing of your sword. Or you can push Ctrl Alt, but I never noticed that until starting this review. I need to stop being so sleepy. Once you get the pattern of most enemies, the combat is pretty easy, but at first you are going to be turned off by it. And that's saying something, considering this is the game that has instant kills you can't see coming. A positive is the boss fights are great, very manageable and fun, mostly because once you get there, you are fully committed to the game's rhythm. For a game made in 2009, it's impressive. And knowing what I do now, it's a great stepping stone for the franchise. Original Cursed is getting a remake in the future that looks like it will iron out all the bugs and complaints, while upping the visual style quite a bit. I'm looking forward to it since the game was such a nice little slice to get started on. But like any good horror franchise, you can never stop at just one. Cursed 2 is something of a departure. While I like the first game for its simplicity and atmosphere, the second one is a love-hate relationship. Cursed 2 takes place a few months after the first game. When Jennifer came back from the mine, things in the town started to change. Cult came in and took over, and monsters are roaming everywhere. You play her friend from the bar of the first game, this guy, looking good. Oh! The game is the same style of point and click as the first one, but a bit more open-ended. You have the entire town to explore, which means driving from location to location, keeping track of where you are on the map, and I really like this style of movement. It's tense and makes the world feel larger than it is. It doesn't become as tedious as you might think. It's about the calm between moments of fighting monsters, hearing the engine whir along as you drive, keeping track of the map. It's quite relaxing. It does mean that the game inches along rather than moving at a nice pace like the first one, because having all this choice means making more mistakes. Finding a key in one area means having to figure out where it's needed. This isn't helped by all the useless items you can pick up. The developer decided to abuse our gamer instinct of grabbing whatever isn't nailed to the ground, which causes your inventory to fill up really quick. Inventory management is pretty frustrating where things seem like they would fit and don't. Just look at my trunk endgame. These systems felt less like a step up from the last one and more like a step to the left. Not quite the direction I was hoping the sequel would go. The combat has also been changed for better and worse. You still get random battles, which are completely unavoidable now, but you can run away, which again, I've never seen work, so that fits. But combat takes some inspiration from Punch-Out. You can dodge left, right, or down to avoid enemy attacks, and that works really well, sometimes. But some enemies are very hard to read, especially these zombies that switch their attack direction and can really mess with your head. This makes Cursed 2 one of the hardest games I have ever played. Now I know some people just perked up hearing that. Good, you'll love this. You have a variety of weapons starting off with a hammer, finding a pistol later, shotgun, and my favorite, the sword and shield from the first game. Along with a more in-depth combat system, you can level up and put skill points into certain traits like damage, speed, reloading, and magic. I just maxed out my strength so I could kill enemies quickly during random battles, and it worked pretty well for me. I loved Cursed 2 because it has an unmistakable vibe. This feels like the perfect Halloween game. Sure, it might look a little silly in places, but the game is taking it all seriously, and that makes the stakes in the world feel all the more dangerous. I love the music and visuals, which are a huge upgrade from the first game. Some of these monsters look horrifying, except Death, who looks like he hasn't had a bowel movement in months, if not years. For all my complaining and things I didn't like, the game has a lot of merits, and showcases further why I love looking at strange indie titles like this. With a little ironing out and hammering out the sides, I'm 100% sure he made the third game a masterpiece. I hope I don't regret saying that. Cursed 3 is something else. Literally, the game changed again. I expected a refinement of the previous game, and in some parts that's what I got. But in others, why? So Cursed 3 follows the good ending of the second game, which I will not spoil for people, as I'm just here to talk about the games and not reveal every detail. But you find yourself trapped at a house trying to figure out another mystery related to the cult of Malus. Again, he really upped his animation and drawing game on this one, and it looks even better than the second game. The music and environment design are suitably creepy and make the mystery feel more dense. Movement isn't trapped to a clicking mouse anymore, since now you have full 360-degree view of every area you enter. I can choose multiple paths to take. The inventory has had a massive overhaul that makes things just easier to arrange and see how much space you have, but the storage box is gone, so just drop everything in the living room. Hope the rats don't get to it. Good news, unlike the first game, no items are useless this time. You also have a quick selection bar at the bottom mapped to the 1 to 4 keys, making it easier to switch between tools and weapons, but be careful not to click there and waste bullets. I did that. A lot. Lastly, the magic system isn't just scrolls that have a once-off use, but these symbols you find to unlock various spells like healing and a fireball. I love this. It reminded me of casting runes in Arx Fatalis. Even getting the handing right can be tricky at first. Combat once again is a mixed bag. Unlike previous games, random encounters don't make you enter a battle mode. Instead, enemies enter the same area as you and become visible on the little radar as to where they are in relation. The aiming is improved, especially since the game needs more accuracy. You can now stun these eye-stalked enemies by hitting them in the eye with arrows, but some enemies keep jumping around, making it harder to hit them. The game again gives you the option to flee, and this time it works, but the enemies don't stay put. They will follow you, which adds another element to this game. Hiding. Now I don't hate hiding in horror games. Done right, it can be a tense experience, but it's a double-edged sword, especially if the enemies never leave. I never got hiding to work, except in one instance, and we'll get to that later. For now, let's talk about companions, which are actually helpful and a great addition, but my problem with them stems from the tone. These are also demons, like the ones you fight, but with an extra level of sass on them, and it made me question what tone the game is going for. One second I find a pile of dead bodies in the pit, and the next I'm saving this eyeball from a mouse. I guess saying it like that makes it sound brilliant. Lastly, you now have a stamina bar that drains when you move around and get into fights, which makes the backtracking feel more exhausting, literally. And every now and then, you have to go to sleep to get it back, but also keep an eye on the time because at midnight, it's time to survive an invasion. Cool, right? Except, would you be shocked to know I didn't choose that song? That's in the game. Okay, let me go back for a second. I love this melodic intro for the second game. It really sets me in the mood and got me hyped for playing this. But I loved it even more when I first heard it 10 years ago in a little film called Once Upon a Time in the West. It's the Man with the Harmonica song by Ennio Morricone, the song that plays in one of the greatest scenes in cinema, and it's just here. I kinda love the game for taking this chance. Taking a song and recontextualizing it for another scene is just what Tarantino does, so I commend Disaster Squad for its use, and I would love to shower more compliments, but all the other music in the game seems to be taken from other games, and I don't know how I feel about that. Sure, some of these games are old enough where I think the licensing is up in the air, but just using BFG Edition like that is kinda bad. The reason BFG Edition hit me harder than the other songs is just how it doesn't fit. There's another song in Cursed 2 I don't want to spoil that feels out of place with the retro-styled music that plays throughout. I kinda hope for the next game he makes enough money to hire a composer. Okay, even though that last segment was pretty heated, I like Cursed 3. Unlike the other games in this video, I didn't finish this one, but I do plan on giving it a more detailed look later in the year. It's interesting how he keeps building up every game over the last, but not necessarily improving them in ways you'd think. It shows a commitment to this franchise and trying to deliver the best version of that experience in his mind, but also the faults in not fixing the things you did wrong before and instead replacing them with new ideas. It's why I love looking at solo devs and the road they carve for themselves, without a large corporation hanging overhead to dictate what they should do. The Cursed Trilogy and Disaster Squad Productions really showcase what this series is about. Being a solo creator with a vision but also not afraid to throw things at the wall and see if they stick. They're filled with such interesting ideas, and nothing gets me more excited than a good idea, even when it's not executed to the best. So here we are, at the end of the second episode of Developer Spotlight, and trust me, there is much more to come. Let me know if you plan on checking these games out or know any other solo developers. I have a list that's always growing, and until then, I'll see you next time with more great games.